going to be having some of our speakers join us online as well from the United States. So we would try to make accommodation for that. So that's just a heads up in terms of the organization of the program for the day. So I'll not take too much time, but we'll use this opportunity to call on Professor Prempeh to give us the opening remarks. Let's give him a round of applause.
Good morning, friends, brothers and sisters, colleagues. Welcome, those of you who are coming from outside Ghana. Welcome to Accra again. And we are very pleased that you could make it here to join us on this. This should be the second annual. We'll call it the second annual WADEMOS General Meeting and Convening. In the period since our last meeting, as far as democracy, the democratic landscape in the West Africa region is concerned, we have experienced, since our last meeting, one more incident of democratic collapse in Niger, and that particular incident sent shockwaves through not just the region, but across Africa, and created a storm that I think continues to reverberate, a standoff between ECOWAS and the Nigerian junta, and created, I think it caused a lot more soul-searching around democracy and its future in the region, even though we were already familiar with the situations in Mali and Burkina Faso and Guinea. I think the Nigerian situation just raised the whole issue to the fore in a very different kind of way. And we're happy that at least we were able to avert the war on democracy. I mean, we almost had a war to restore democracy, which would have been a first probably in Africa. But we continue to have trouble spots in the region. The situation in Mali and Burkina Faso in terms of the security situation continues to remain in crisis mode. The exit of UN and other international forces helping with security and peacekeeping in the area has created a new kind of situation there with respect to security, and our neighbors and brothers and sisters continue to grapple with the issue. The transition in those two countries appear to have stalled for some time now. We have seen a bit of movement in Guinea, most recently on the transition, and actually we were just 2 days ago, just yesterday, we hosted a delegation at CDD from the transitional parliament from Guinea-Conakry, and we had some very fruitful discussions with them about elections, transitions, and other issues. So the picture, I'm sure that we'll get a fuller picture of the situation when we get into the discussions and also when we get into our general meeting. On the elections front, the region has been busy. Elections, we've had two somewhat flawed elections, to put it mildly, one in Nigeria, the first in a year, the second in Sierra Leone. The Nigeria one at least went through a judicial process, which has come to an end. The Sierra Leonean one, unfortunately, we continue to experience reverberations from the outcome of that election. Our sisters, brother from Sierra Leone, who are here with us today, reports that there was still gunfire when they were leaving Freetown. And I read this morning that the breach of the armory is now being treated as an attempted coup d'etat by the government. So the situation in Sierra Leone in the aftermath of the flawed election is unfortunately not a good one. Liberia has also had what I think by all accounts has been a successful election leading to the defeat of an incumbent. Whenever an incumbent is defeated peacefully through democratic process, it is a plus for democracy. So I think we should congratulate our brothers and sisters in Liberia for a very peaceful election, and the President, George Weah, for his extraordinarily conciliatory and progressive concession speech, which has earned him, I don't know if he's going to get the Nobel Peace Prize for that, or because these days there are very few good candidates for Nobel Peace Prizes, so this might register as a very positive one. So all of the tension, all of the apprehension we had going to that election has now subsided, and we're happy that it went the way that we've seen it. I think there were legislative elections too in Guinea-Bissau in the course of the period. For all of these general elections, WADEMOS was able to send a solidarity mission comprising a few persons from the Secretariat, joined by other members from countries that were not the ones holding the elections. So we sent solidarity missions to support our members and other civil society partners who were in country and who were the ones doing the election observation in country. So we sent missions to Nigeria pre-election as well as election day missions. We sent missions to similar missions to Sierra Leone and then to Liberia. And on the term limits front, we saw a happy, somewhat so far happy ending to the uncertainty in Senegal about the plans of President Macky Sall. He finally made a decision not to contest, but it leaves unsettled the question of whether or not the term limit provisions in Senegal allow for only 2 terms or more. We are still uncertain about that. There are still uncertainties, of course, with respect to how the elections early next year are going to go and who might or might not contest. There are still difficulties around that. The Gambia has also been unable to resolve the issue of term limits. But I think we will get a fuller accounting of all of these developments from the Secretariat. I expect that the Secretariat would give us more of some kind of an annual report or accounting of the state of play of democracy in the region. So I will not take too much time. This is just to welcome you to Accra and to say that we're very, very pleased that you're all here to join so that we can deliberate on the future of democracy, development, peace, stability in the region. And I wish all of us very fruitful and successful deliberations in the next couple of days. Thanks and welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Prempeh, for that introduction. Always very much on point and erudite. And as he said, we can see that it's not very easy to have effective democracy as we've always wanted it. And the examples that he's given, we can also tell that it's very, very structural and socially and politically contextualized or embedded, geographically embedded. So we'll try to unpack all of these various strands as far as our march towards democratic consolidation in the sub-region is concerned. And we are grateful to the professor for laying that foundation, or at least establishing the prompt for us to have these discussions. At this point, we would go ahead with our program. We have with us here today Mr. Demain Ikironeye. Is the head of, head of Partnership CDD West Africa. And we have to emphasize that he's representing Idayat Hassan, the Executive Director, CDD West Africa, and co-chair of WADEMOS Steering Committee. Mr. Demain, please have the floor. Let's give him a round of applause.
Good morning, our distinguished members, invited participants. Like we say in Nigeria, I will stand on the existing protocol that Prof established. I bring greetings from Nigeria, from CDD West Africa, and the entire people of Nigeria to WADEMOS, and to also say thank you for the role you played during the Nigeria election, general election in February and in March. Prof has said it. Since the formation of WADEMOS in September or so last year, a lot of development has happened, has taken place. He forgot to mention the legislative election in Benin in January. That started it to Nigeria one. And for us in Nigeria, yes, the election came. The judicial processes have taken place, and the losers and the winners have emerged. We can say that it was peaceful, but Nigeria has not been so divided like we are with the last general election. The people of Nigeria are fast losing hope, especially in the judiciary, one critical stakeholder in democracy. And the hope now is on the civil society and the media. And while we say that we had a successful election, we should also be vigilant so that the civic space is not shrinked. We need to, like the theme of the convening and the annual retreat is amplifying response. We need to amplify the response, we need to amplify the solidarity, we need to amplify our voices, both with the states and the countries like Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Liberia that have had their own election. And more so with the states and the countries that are in transition, like we have in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Guinea. Our brothers and sisters in the CSO and the media need more of our voices now. If they are on 50 level, we need to increase it. If the solidarity is on 30, we need to get it to 80. If the support is on 5, we need to get it to 8 and 10. This is what they need. We should also be vigilant across the states. Prof has mentioned what happened in Sierra Leone. Our prayers and our support are with our brothers and sisters in that country. And I will say, before I close, to say that we need more of each other. We need to be vigilant. The unfortunate thing in Nigeria has happened. We also need to increase our support and our voice to the civil society organizations and other democratic stakeholders in that country and within to ensure that Nigeria is also returned to the transition path to democracy. I wish us a very fruitful deliberation for these 2 days gathering. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that brief one, and also updating us with the situation in Nigeria. You know, as you were talking, the point, and I'm sure we'll be engaging with these subject matters later on, is that the success of democracy is inextricably intertwined with the institutions in the various countries, like he mentioned, the judiciary in Nigeria. And I remember when Barack Obama came to Ghana back in the day, he said, Africa does not need strong men, it needs strong institutions. And so I think what he has said speaks to that particular factor. The question, I'm sure, for us as civil society groups then becomes, how can we make sure that the various inputs or normative ideals that we had hoped for in democracy translate into practical outputs, and that it works better for our people in the various countries? And also the concern about civil society coming together. There's some fear that even civil society is declining in itself. Yes, it's facing some challenges in terms of the threats, and other factors. So I'm sure, and that would be very sad, if the institutions that are supposed to be gatekeepers of accountability, transparency, plurality, genuine elections are themselves fragmented or not as effective as it should be. So I think this will also become a matter of concern so that we have a much stronger regional, pluralistic civil society networking and collaboration. And I'm sure that's why WADEMOS is there. So thank you very much. We're going to move on. We'll be having a couple of goodwill messages. First from the Commissioner of Political Affairs, Peace and Security, ECOWAS, His Excellency Dr. Abdel Fattah Musa, who's represented by Mr. Ebenezer Esiedu, the head of Democracy and Governance for ECOWAS. However, we have a little bit of something to contend with. Our next speaker is online, or is online, and is preparing to join us at 10:30. We're a bit shy of that. It just hit 10:20. So I don't know if Mr. Sedu can assure us that he can speak for 10 minutes. If you can, we can go ahead and take him. Or maybe it's just a subtle way of reminding him that he should just keep it within that so that we can get our next speaker on the line. With that, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Mr. Sedu with a round of applause.
Thank you very much. I'll try and make it within the 10 minutes that you said, so that we can give opportunity for others to also speak. On that note, I would want to say thank you very much, MC, for inviting me. So I'm going to make this speech on behalf of the Commissioner, Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Dr. Abdel Fattah Musa. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is always a pleasure to be with you, and particularly to deliver a goodwill message on the auspicious occasion of your network's 2023 annual convening. Let me begin by saying Akwaba. This is a Ghanaian word of warm welcome, particularly to those of you coming from beyond the shores of Ghana. I am confident that you will quickly discover that you are amongst a people who pride themselves, and justifiably so, on their sense of great hospitality. I would also like to express ECOWAS Commission's profound appreciation to WADEMOS and its network members for inviting ECOWAS to participate in this important convening. I must equally congratulate you on the one-year anniversary of the establishment of WADEMOS and the humbling achievements that the network has chalked thus far. Allow me to also commend the absolute commitment and resilience of CSOs in your individual and collective efforts in advocating for the entrenchment of democratic values, particularly in your respective countries and in the region at large. I am delighted that there are concerted efforts and synergy by civil society actors to address present democratic recession in West Africa. These initiatives are crucial as the present context of democracy, peace, and security are complex, making single-factor explanations or overly simplistic solution ineffective. There is therefore an urgent and compelling need for dedicated and strategic collective efforts of critical stakeholders, particularly the civil society, to join hands with other democratic forces towards achieving stable and enduring democratic processes and lasting peace in West Africa. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you will agree with me that there is a progressive departure from the recent spiral of coup d'etat and democratic recess across the region. From the legislative election in Guinea-Bissau, where the opposition won majority of the seats, to the just concluded historical elections in Liberia, where the incumbent lost and conceded defeat to the victorious opposition candidate, the ECOWAS region is poised to reclaim its seats as beacon of democracy for the rest of the African continent. Also, despite concerns that characterize the presidential elections in Sierra Leone, ECOWAS, working with other international and national stakeholders, were able to bring the government and opposition parties to sign an accord to address the stalemate that ensued in the aftermath of the June 24, 2023 polls. Our recent experience of unconstitutional change of government had informed our quick and proactive concerted response in safeguarding democracy in Sierra Leone. The success gained so far can be further consolidated by leveraging strategically the agency of the civil society in managing democratic transition and also deter future political uncertainties in the region. It is, however, disturbing to know that a little over a month after a successful feat, we heard on Sunday morning of an apparent coup attempt in Sierra Leone. Indeed, some of our sources from within indicate that, but for the resolute of the citizenry, particularly the youth, those elements might have succeeded should they have received any form of support from the populace. So that also gives credence to the Afrobarometer study that were conducted recently, that there appears to be a shift, notwithstanding the deficit that we're experiencing in governance. I mean, there is a shift towards preference for democratic systems of governance. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the theme for this convening, Amplifying CSO's Response to Democratic Recession in West Africa, is therefore auspicious, and as it aligns with the ECOWAS Commission Management 4x4 strategic objectives. It is no secret that between 2020 and 2023, the continent of Africa has experienced 9 successful military coups d'etat, of which 2 were counter-coups. Of the 9 successful coups, 6 of them took place in West Africa, including in Mali, 2020 and 2021, Guinea in 2021, Burkina Faso, January and September 2022, and Niger in July 2023. In addition to these successful coups, there have been other attempted coups. Of course, we experienced one just Sunday. Within the same time, in Niger, March 2021, before the eventual one, there was one in March 2021, just 2 days before the inauguration of President-elect then, Mohamed Bazoum. The Gambia also experienced similar thing in December 2021, and in Guinea-Bissau, February 2022. This is the present scorecard of our region, and we are even being mocked at certain international fora where West Africa is now being referred to as the cool region. Unfortunately so. The current ECOWAS Commission management is presently consolidating our reflection on redefining the integration and coordination of CSO's engagements into efforts geared towards advancing democracy, good governance, and sustainable development as pathway to accelerating the realization of ECOWAS Vision 2050. ECOWAS's renewed interest in partnering with CSOs is hinged on the need to make West Africa CSO's platform more proactive in galvanizing, amplifying, and harmonizing forces to address the prevailing democratic reversals and threats to peace and security in the region. This effort will not only reflect prevailing standards at the continental and global levels, but also will be guided through an enhanced framework for West Africa CSOs to play a more active role in contributing to the realization of ECOWAS Vision 2050 and in line with Article 81 of the ECOWAS Revised Treaty, that's 1993. We therefore hope that at the end of this gathering, a framework and modalities would be drawn up to support ECOWAS' plan of establishing economic, social and cultural council, ECOSOC, West Africa at that level. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, finally, I would like to seize this opportunity once more to congratulate the entire leadership and management of WADEMOS for organizing this convening. I have no doubt that your deliberations will yield recommendations to complement ongoing efforts aimed at supporting timely return to constitutional order in the affected member states and also to deter further collapse of constitutional democracy in West Africa. I wish you all fruitful deliberations, and I thank you for your kind consideration. Thank you.
I think Honorable deserves another round of applause. A big man representing His Excellency. So thank you very much, the head of democracy and governance for the sub-region, ECOWAS, actually, Mr. Ebenezer Sidu. Thank you so much for giving us that teaser. And he's talked a lot about this meeting renewing the capacity of civil society to complement the efforts at the sub-regional level. So thanks for that reminder, and I hope it will guide our thoughts and our deliberations over the next 2 days. Thank you so much. And right on time as well. Seriously, right on time, 10:30. So thank you for obliging us on that. At this point, we wouldn't waste too much time. We'll move to His Excellency Ambassador Bankole Adeoye, the Commissioner of Political Affairs, Peace and Security at the African Union Commission. We are very pleased and honored to have his august presence at this event. Ladies and gentlemen, he's right online and ready for us. And so even though he's not here, I think he can still hear the resounding clasp of our applause. So I would kindly and humbly want to call on us to welcome Ambassador online by a round of applause.
Let me express deep appreciation to the West African Democracy Solidarity Network, WADEMOS, for associating the African Union Commission with your noble and strategic regional network. Last year, We were pleased to join. Sorry, can you hear me? Is the network clear? Yes, the network here is not very stable, so please you mind me without the video. Exactly. Thank you. So thank you so much. So I was saying that first, I'm very pleased joining you and for the work you are doing for the benefit of our continent, particularly through your sub-region. Last year, we joined you in birthing a new regional non-state actors architecture to focus on governance, peace, security, and development in West Africa, with focus on democracy. And let me associate with the statement read on his behalf by the ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace, and Security, stating that definitely we are seeing a backsliding, but this democratic regression must be resisted with all stakeholders, inclusive of WADEMOS and your other network members. I'm very optimistic that you hold a promise for West Africa. This optimism remains intact and is necessary to build on a social foundation, a solid foundation that will accompany member states of ECOWAS, the Commission, and your working on the newsletter will also serve as a source of rich updates for us in the African Union. We continue to express readiness to work with you to find lasting solutions to the many challenges on our continent, be they in governance, security, or achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as Agenda 2063. It is with all confidence that I want to assure you that for us, the WADEMOS model is an interesting concept, a framework that we believe will serve as inspiration for the rest of other members of our region. In the early months of WADEMOS' existence, the AU has been planning to launch the African Network of Think Tanks. This network for peace was launched in February this year, and since then, we've been working particularly on the nexus between peace, security, governance, and sustainable development. It is necessary that we expand, we create the enabling environment in the intergovernmental diplomatic space for networks such as yours. It is important that we build the Africa we want, that is inclusive, that is democratic, and that is interested in promoting women and youth participation in the political space. Let me end by assuring you that you will have the continuous support of the entire African Union as you move towards your 2024 plan of action. The Africa we want will only be inclusive, will only be attainable when the civil society takes its rightful place. The civil society can contribute to promoting a conflict-free Africa. The civil society can contribute to effective governance. The civil society can also help realize peace dividends. I want to assure you that in 2024, we plan to revamp the implementation of the Accra Declaration on Unconstitutional Changes of Government. Multi-stakeholder approach will be necessary to build the necessary resistance against the onslaught of unconstitutional changes of government. The African Union, as you know, has a number of normative frameworks, shared values, in strengthening democracy, promoting constitutionalism, and the rule of law. And the only way we can do that is to partner with the civil society. And I'm pleased to announce that we have also established with the civil society a network, Pan-African network of civil society for political affairs, peace, and security in our department. We have established a knowledge platform that works with all regions through what is called the Inter-Regional Knowledge Exchange on early warning and conflict prevention. So we see a lot of commonality working with you, and I want to assure you that we will scale up our engagement and we will be ready to ensure that your network is able to interface, inspire the rest of our regions to be able to make Africa a better place. I thank you so much for giving us the opportunity and really wish you the best in today's engagement. I thank you so much.
Politique, dynamique et militante de la société civile en Sierra Leone, prête à faire fonctionner la démocratie dans un pays post-conflit. Notre keynote speaker se consacre à garantir un changement démocratique dans la politique sierra-léonaise. Elle se consacre également à ce que la gouvernance soit favorable aux pauvres et valorise le droit et le bien-être des citoyens. Depuis plus de 20 ans, elle continue de s'exprimer avec force dans les efforts visant à garantir la justice et l'égalité aux citoyens en Sierra Leone en particulier et en Afrique de l'Ouest en général, avec un focus sur les femmes et les personnes en difficulté. Elle s'investit à demander des comptes au gouvernement depuis 1996 et elle n'a de cesse de plaider pour que les femmes participent au processus politique. J'ai l'honneur de vous inviter à accueillir ici Marcela Samba de la Sierra Leone, qui est également la directrice exécutive de campagne pour bonne gouvernance et également à la tête de New Election Watch Sierra Leone. Je vous prie d'accueillir Marcela Samba sous vos ovations, s'il vous plaît.
Merci tout le monde. You thought I would be speaking French. No, I will be speaking English this morning. You know, I'm trying to put on a smile in the midst of the challenges. And that's the tone I will be setting for the next 2 days. That in the midst of challenges, we need to find the solutions. I want to thank WADEMOS and the organizers for according me this responsibility to deliver the keynote address for this two-day convening. Distinguished participants, colleagues, civil society, in solidarity, I bring you greetings from National Elections Watch in Sierra Leone, a coalition of 400 organizations charged to promote credible and transparent elections, and for my primary organization, where I serve as Executive Director, Campaign for Good Governance. As I did mention, I am so delighted to be part of the WADEMOS network and to share our common agenda of promoting and sustaining democracy in our individual countries and in the region as a whole. Since we met at last year's convening, a lot has happened in West Africa, and the feedback on democracy is mixed. There are some disappointing lows and some really encouraging highs. Liberia comes to mind. And that is where I want us to zero our thoughts, that democracy can work and we can make it happen. However, despite that optimism, it is no gainsay that this thing called democracy in our region is under stress. It is having a hard time. But we will not be despondent in our pursuit to build democratic societies. Today, I will entreat all of you to celebrate the ice, to reflect on where we have gone wrong, and to collectively use the WADEMOS space as an opportunity to push back what in some instances I believe is a wicked problem. Democratic decline is definitely on us. I have referred to it as a wicked problem because it's manifesting in shapes and forms that we cannot recognize. This problem, for the most part, and at a personal level, had put me in 6 months of democratic trauma, even in my home country. Let me at this juncture unpack democratic backsliding and to evaluate civil society's preparedness for this for a while. In short, democratic backsliding is synonymous with what we call de-democratization. It's a complex form of democratic regression, democratic breakdown, or what I usually refer to as counterfeit democracy. Counterfeit democracy is a democratic subtype with varying sides of authoritarianism and dictatorship. It lacks democratic progress in every shape and form. Whilst external actors, capacitated civil society, organized us, and we were well positioned as pro-democracy actors, unfortunately, we are currently ill-prepared, ill-equipped to confront the challenges of de-democratization, or in essence, defend democracy. Arguably, little investment was made in our civil society processes to tackle democratic backsliding, de-democratization, or retrogression. Many of us have been shocked to the teeth, caught unawares, or become victims of circumstances when authoritarians and dictators advance their tactics with renewed vigor. We have been in shock when constitutions are changed for elongated terms. Similar shock notice. Authoritarians have come to power through facade elections, and democratic promoters have been faced with fierce attacks in line of their duties. The resultant effect is our states in West Africa are degenerating into various democratic subtypes. Now, we have counterfeit democracies run by democratic dictators and self-styled leaders attempting to manipulate constitutions, and in worst-case scenario, 5 of our countries have seen the resurgence of military coups. That's the reality that's upon us. Colleagues, the future of democracy, and by extension, lie in stable societies. With the current situation unfolding in our region, our future is currently compromised. In fact, and for the most part, the events and issues unfolding are too complex to decipher, denying any form of political analysis, thus leaving civil society in distress. My country is currently in the radar. In our perplexed states in the region, just like a case of bereavement, we have been sending messages of condolences to one another to keep the faith. These messages have come in the form of condemnation or in solidarity statements. The reality is that democratic backsliding is having a toll on us, and it is coming heavy and in distress. No wonder Samuel P. Huntington, 1993, the renowned scholar, described democracy as a wave of progress and reversals which must be tackled. While we are well positioned as civil society to propel democratic progress, our strategies are not sharp enough to tackle the role of illiberal actors exploiting societal vulnerabilities, undermining democratic norms, and weakening established democratic institutions. The most worrying aspect of this trend is that some of our very own civil society members are now enablers of authoritarianism. Civil society at home in my country, Sierra Leone, and in the region where you all are representing, therefore lack a common position on political plurality and how we must uphold the principles of democracy. This must be the concern of WADEMOS over the next 2 days. But I don't want you to be sad. I have started in a very somber note. I want to reassure you that the tendency is not new to our region. The global picture equally demonstrates such. Since 2019, the Freedom House records have shown a consistent 13 years decline in political rights and liberty. The content of the authoritarian playbook is therefore real and manifesting in several West African contexts. Sadly, a number of our countries are gradually losing their democratic futures. As it is, the political future of our region is currently challenged. It's happening right in our eyes as civil society. Can we sit back? The answer is no. Because a lot more citizens are losing faith in the democratic process. I tell you, democracy must deliver where other forms of governance have failed. We as civil society, just like the independent media, therefore have a role to play. Let's just look back for a while. my mind goes to the 1990s. And that was when, at a personal level, I started activism as a student leader when I was doing my first degree. We all saw the vigor with which we entered the stage of civil society. When an extraordinary range of countries during the third wave of democratization transitioned, and subsequently, civil society became pro-democracy actors supporting multi-party elections or constitutional protection for all, especially the rights of minorities, promoting freedom of speech and conscience, and becoming ambassadors for promoting measures consistent with international human rights treaties and covenants. Now, as democracy retrogresses, we must organize and not agonize. The same way we organized in the 1990s and ushered in the third wave of democratization, positioning ourselves as civil society to take up the challenge to promote clean elections, participation of women and young people, and inclusive societies. When we are faced with the challenges of retrogression, it is our responsibility to design strategies to ensure that our countries and the future of our states are safe. So basically, this morning, even as I set the tone for the conversation, I want to flag some ideas as to what can we do as WADEMOS. Because civil society is the broad array of formal and informal groups of people and organizations existing in a country, but sits outside the government and the private sector. Our groups, since democratic renewal in the region, in the 1990s, as I've just mentioned, have been promoting democratic values, human rights, holding governments to account, and ensuring free and transparent elections, among others. Unfortunately, the strength and culture of civil society is fastly eroding as democracy declines. So there is an attendant or resultant effect. As democracy declines, the quality of civil society reduces equally. Many had ceased to become activists for the people's interest, but for their personal political causes. Thankfully, this group, which I am a proud member of, the WADEMOS network, is gathered here today, not with this counterfeit agenda, but with an ethos to strengthen civil rights and liberty, and to ensure democracy survives in the region despite the odds. The truth, however, is civil society in its current state and form is all prepared for this enormous task. The question now is, what can WADEMOS do? Because democratic backsliding must be resisted. I take that up again. The question is, what can WADEMOS do? Because democratic backsliding must be resisted. The anatomy of civil society shows series of deficiencies. If we want to resist backsliding, we first and foremost need to look inwards and to see how active or how well are we health-wise to take up this challenge. Unfortunately, our anatomy shows serious deficiency. Foremost is pervasive poverty among our rank and file. People can fall for anything, so they cannot stand up for anything. As democracy displays varying subtypes, the recent spate of civil society groups are worrying. We've just seen civil society springing up left, right, and center. No coordination. Many of these groups can do anything for money. in the name of civil society. Populist and authoritarian governments have deployed a political narrative that spurs the consistent attacks on civil society. Either we are a security threat, as dissent is synonymous with instability, or we are opposition operatives. What can WADEMOS do? In some countries, there are repressive laws and policies which continue to shrink the civic space. Some activists have been censored, surveillance, and arrested. Various forms of repression deployed on social media to silence known voices and to stifle freedom of speech and association. What can WADEMOS do? Attempts to mobilize public opinion to respect democratic norms and value is met with factions among ourselves. When the civil society house is divided among itself, what can WADEMOS do? Have we ever thought why democracy is failing in the region? The truth is that elected leaders have failed to deliver. So in between elections, what can WADEMOS do to promote good governance, respect the rights of citizens, and ensure integrity and ethos are the norms of our democratic culture? What can WADEMOS do? Today, this is to spur us into action. As I speak today, evidence abounds in the region where citizens are danced once more to welcome military leaders because democracy is failing. When and where did we go wrong? Did we not promise each other that the only way to leadership should be an expressed and transparent will of the people through the ballot box? How come do we have citizens dancing again for military leaders? So the return of militarization in the continent is on us. We have long agreed that power in Africa should never be through the barrels of loaded guns. But this is the case for 5 countries in West Africa as I speak to you. Let me restate for the records that irrespective of how benevolent a military dictator is or can be, the express will of the great people of West Africa should be through free and credible elections, not the bullet of the gun. Therefore, if the setbacks of democratic backsliding must be addressed, civil society needs to look inwards. We really and truly need repackaging to assume a frontline role as credible democracy promoters. Our rank and files must be reconstituted and our ideals made of sterner stuff. I take that up again. Therefore, if the setback of democratic backsliding must be addressed, civil society needs to look inwards. We really and truly need repackaging to assume a frontline and credible role as democracy promoters. Our rank and file must be reconstituted and our ideals made of sterner stuff. The good news is that we have WADEMOS in the room today, and we'll be doing so for the next 2 days. How are we going to shape our collective future? Amidst the challenges, this decency exists. I see a number of partners in the room across West African countries that I can identify with, I can stand with them at every moment because I have seen them deliver through and through. This decency exists. How can we tap into the quality of this decency that exists in the room? Last year, in this beautiful city of Accra, and in a very auspicious event, we launched the Solidarity Network as a response to the signs of democratic backsliding and authoritarianism in West Africa. The aim is to mobilize, coordinate, and leverage the collective power of pro-democracy actors, and to also engage regional bodies and instruments to push back democratic erosion, defend and invigorate democratic norms. This is exactly what we need: a network society organizing from communities, towns, villages, and across countries. WADEMOS must therefore be strengthened to be a reliable platform for civil society in the region with the legitimacy to push back democratic decline. I foresee, and with your collective support, a network West Africa where alternative sources of information can be sought, with continuous civic education and engagement with national governments and regional actors. This could be achieved through customized training and accreditation of groups in our various countries. A net exercise of our accredited members in civil society. Remember, I mentioned that some of our very own had fallen through the cracks, and they are enablers of authoritarianism. Finally, I tend to talk too much, but I'll drop the mic in a minute. Finally, we need to design a strategy for effective partnership with ECOWAS and the African Union. Collectively, we need to impress in the minds of our collective leadership in our various countries why adherence to the principles of democracy and the various instruments and covenants signed together with the normative framework are very important. They are not just important. Adherence to those covenants are sacrosanct. There are no two ways about it. If democratic principles call for transparent and fair elections, when you fail to do that, the consequences are there. So collectively with our regional bodies, civil society must be able to ensure a constructive mechanism to pull all of us together so that our collective future can no longer be compromised, but we will have a future that is secured. Colleagues, it is important that whilst we talk about all of this, the rights of citizens must be put at the center in order for our collective future and destinies to be secured. I thank you for your rapt attention.
I think we'll all agree that was a very electrifying and energetically delivered speech. And so for that, let's give our speaker another. And I must say that Ms. Marcella Samba Sese went into exile in Ghana, for some time from her country. And so she lives what she speaks or practices. And that's a personal, something she personally suffered. And we need to appreciate that, because it was definitely very challenging. So thank you very much for that. And also for coming here to speak to us, talking to us about a lot of concepts, counterfeit democracy, and explicating the term backsliding to our understanding, but also challenging us, as civil society, to not be fragmented and not to be part of the process of the declining nature of the democracy. So when she was speaking, she reminded me of a term political scientists like to use, fiefdoms, little fiefdoms that are created. And it looks like it is translating, well, from her speech, into civil society. And so she's giving us something to think about. And I'm sure we can begin to think about how we can evolve, from the contemporary nature of how our work is done, and also how we can contribute, contribute to the consolidation, not the erosion of it. So Her overarching speech definitely has given us something to think about, and at this point we'll take a break. But before we do that, we have a group picture to take. And then we'll take our morning refreshment.